Vaughn, we may not know exactly what the president's going to say. We know why he's saying it.
We know exactly why the president is saying it, because for 5.5 years, he has wanted to make the case to the American public that the 2020 election was stolen from him. And that is why it is important that we report on what the deliberations have been over the last 72 hours leading up, Alicia, to tonight's address by the president. MS Now reporting, we have been told by sources that on Monday at a White House briefing, along with election integrity activists, that's how that they are being framed. These are folks that I am told include the likes of Catherine Engelbrecht from True the Vote, which was the organization behind that debunked 2,000 Mules movie that actually had to be removed because of false statements and allegations of fraud, of stuffing of ballots into drop boxes around the country. We know that people like Catherine Engelbrecht were a part of the briefing on Monday, as well as up to 25 other of these, the way that it would be framed, election integrity activists, folks that had pushed the president's ideas that the 2020 election was stolen. They were the only ones that were part of this White House briefing on Monday. We are told that there are going to be allegations made by President Trump about election interference at the hands of China and Venezuela, that was a part of the deliberations, and that there was the potential vulnerabilities of voting machines. And when we say all of this tonight and when we watch this speech tonight, we have to point out the fact that from our reporting at MS Now, we are being told that Bill Pulte, the acting director of national intelligence, along with John Solomon, somebody who is a special government employee at the White House, who was onboarded just 1 month ago after putting out a lot of conspiracy theories of fraud online over the course of the last year. These are the two men that have had the ear of the President of the United States and effectively have promised him that they are going to be able to present to him, that he in turn is going to be able to present to the American public, evidence of the idea of the 2020 election being stolen. But we must say, Alicia, the information that has been publicly made available is also representative of the raw material that the intelligence community has. One active current administration official who is familiar with the deliberation of this raw intelligence material told me very precisely here this week, quote, "The intelligence just doesn't say what they wanted to say. I'm sorry. That doesn't mean that the President of the United States isn't going to present it to the American public differently."
Let's talk about the cast of characters that Vaughn just walked us through, both the folks who were in that briefing and the folks who have been tasked with pulling this through for the president. Those names, what do they mean to you?
This is every conspiracy theory peddler and kooky idea merchant under one roof. Having Bill Pulte and John Solomon and those folks part of this flanking him just should undermine any notion that there's some reality to this, that it's more than just stirring down. I mean, I think about this notion of a presidential address. It's like a bad movie mashup of 13 Days and Idiocracy. It's just not something, from what we can tell, to be taken seriously. It's part of this drive to undermine trust and sow doubt and sow confusion, because every time he does something like this, a lot of people think, oh, maybe this is going to mess up the elections or how I'm able to vote.
The quotes, Eddie, from the reporting are just absolutely stunning, that tonight's speech is about personal vindication, that the 2020 election still keeps the president up at night. Amazing how he could not care less about anything other than this.
You know, it's striking. I was sitting here thinking about, the escalation in the Iran war. I was thinking about inflation, gas prices, thinking about grocery prices, all the things that are happening right now in front of everyday ordinary people. And Donald Trump is relitigating the 2020 election, an election that his administration actually administered. We need to just emphasize that. But also, it's also an indication of, we should take it seriously in this sense, Michael, that he is trying to sow distrust, that he's trying to undermine faith in and legitimacy in our electoral process. This is one of the ways in which Donald Trump has assaulted the very foundations of our democratic process. And it's for a particular end. He's worried. He's worried about the American people turning out in massive numbers and handing power over to the Democrats, and what that will mean for his administration moving forward.
Michael wrote basically that same sentiment, that what we're seeing is a psychological warfare campaign waged against American democracy by leaders of its own government. To what end?
Well, I think Eddie's right. I think that to drive voters away, to make people doubt the results when they come in, to make it easier, who knows, to try to mess with things should the results not go the way he wants. That's why it's really important for all of us to say, at this stage in this election year, people will be able to vote. They should make a plan to vote. They should vote early. All the ways people can protect their votes and not listen to all the noise and all the nonsense. Because right now, the noise is actually is part of the plan.
To Eddie's point, though, about the fact that the election that he's claiming had fraud was an election that his own administration administered. How does his logic work that he only seems to win when Democrats are in power?
Well, it's not just that the administration was in power during the election. The intelligence people were in office, and they were monitoring whether China or Venezuela or whoever else was undermining the election or flipping votes. And there was no evidence. This has been litigated over and over and over and over again, report after report, court decision after court decision. Donald Trump lost the election, and it is politically a problem for the Republicans that he is so obsessed with this, as has been said, when there are a lot of other things on people's minds right now.
Well, to that point, there's all that reporting about how Republicans are scared, expletive that I'm not allowed to use on Dayside TV, and they're looking for opportunities to put distance between themselves and the president does this rhetorically, if not substantively. I want you to take a listen to what Senator Cynthia Lummis said when she was asked whether Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff were duly elected.
In your mind, are Senators Ossoff and Warnock duly chosen and sworn?
I don't know.
I mean, what do you do with that?
I mean, so you say that they're going to try to create rhetorical distance, but that's not rhetorical distance at all. They're going to double down because they're afraid. Because they're afraid of what Donald Trump and his folk will mean for them and their political prospects and the like. We're in a moment where it's not just simply Donald Trump and his Marie Antoinette moment, his obsessions, right? Let them eat cake while I'm going to worry about what I'm going to worry about. It's also about all of those folk around him who enable this, including the folks in the Senate, Republicans in the Senate and in the House.
And all the nominees for different jobs, including federal judges or cabinet, who, when asked the simple question, who won the election, stammered and would not answer. Because this is the thing that they cannot say in public without bringing down the wrath of the president. And it's an embarrassment. You know, as we think about how democracy works, what does it really mean to have a democracy? Turns out that one of the key things is if you've lost an election, you accept the results. That wasn't something we all thought about that much, but it's obviously very significant, and it is what is being drained away from a large part of the political elite in the country right now, which is a pretty unpleasant fact to have to state.
I want both of you to listen to what Senator Jon Ossoff said to our colleague Jen Psaki last night about these claims.
He's demonstrated his will to abuse power, and I think that he is trying to create some pretext for an abuse of federal power, trying to create cover for state and local allies to get up to no good in those jurisdictions, and try to lay the groundwork for some kind of potential challenge to the results. That's what I think his goal is.
The first time that they tried to do this, there were, first of all, adults around him who were unwilling to let him proceed. There also, though, was not the same understanding of the multiple levers that they could pull with executive authority. If you listen to what he's saying, this sounds like a whole of government approach.
Oh, absolutely. We tend to think of this moment, Alicia, as if it's just simply Trump and his whims. There's an intellectual scaffolding to this. And we can call them red Cesarists. We can talk about them, as liberal, not nationalist conservatives. We can talk about them in a number of different ways. There are folk who fundamentally are, how can I put this? They are not committed to the basic principles of liberalism, of American democracy as such. And they're using this as an occasion to engage in an all-out assault on those foundational principles.
And it's noteworthy that they're talking about Georgia. Georgia, of course, is where in 2020 he called the Republican Secretary of State and said, could you just find me 11,000 votes? Those elections were run by Republicans, and who will confirm that they were fair and free and that Senators Warnock and Ossoff were duly elected. A lot of it is aimed at those voters. There was an FBI raid of the election workers. And Georgia is an example of one of the strengths in our system that we have, which is that presidents emphatically don't have a role in running elections. States run elections. And that's a positive thing right now.
And Senator Ossoff was explicit. It wasn't just simply Georgia. It was those black voters in Fulton County and those black leaders in Fulton County.
Are you grateful when they say the quiet part out loud?
Of course. Absolutely. Because when they say the quiet part out loud, we can actually address the very thing that has us by the nape of the neck.
I want you to take a listen. Vice President Vance took a shot at justifying whatever this is that the president is doing when asked whether he would accept the midterm results. Here's what he told our own Michael Schnell.
Well, look, of course, we're going to support the results of the midterm elections. We think we're going to win, but ultimately that's up to the American people. But we also think we have to do everything that we can to discourage cheating. Because you will hear Democrats sometimes say, and I love this line, I can't help but laugh at it, cheating isn't that frequent in American elections. Any frequency at all is a problem.
Okay, well, let's just do a quick little fact check here. According to Brookings, incidents of mail-in voter fraud in 2020 occurred at a rate that amounted to roughly 34 cases out of 66 million ballots cast by mail that year. That's about the same number of people who traveled to the moon. They want to do this bait and switch, right? Where it's like, it's massive fraud. And then when you're like, well, there is no massive fraud, they're like, but any level of fraud we ought to be concerned with.
You are more likely to be struck by lightning in the United States than to commit in-person voter fraud. To give one example, it is a vanishingly rare problem. It's a much bigger problem that lots of people don't vote and lots of people are kept from voting by the system we have. And I think that if you're worried about cheating or undermining elections, casting doubt on legitimate election results just because you didn't win is its own form of improper conduct.